Hello, I'm Shieldwall100 and welcome to another quick critique. As you can see, it's a frosty reception for you today. Ha ha ha, puns away. Yes, possibly the most pun-laden Batman crew, and member of the Rogues Gallery has arrived. It's Mr. Freeze, and yeah, I've got all his releases through in the latest batch of models, and yeah, these along with the Black Friday made for a rather extensive shopping list this time, but I'm gonna just show you Mr. Freeze and his crew today, okay? And yeah, I'll get on to the other Black Friday releases in another video. Well, let's get to it then. Thought I'd start with the card pack, give me a chance to sort of give you an idea as to the overview of the crew as well, and how they sort of play, shall we say. It's an interesting one. This is possibly, I think this is probably the first time we've actually had a crew released all at the same time, you know, in terms of a completely new experience, both in terms of the models, not just the leaders, the crew members themselves, but also the objective deck, all released at the same time. Usually the one thing's out before the other, and you can get some play with the previous editions of the models or something, say with an objective deck, but not this time. This is like the first time an entire faction's been dropped in everything. Got to try and work it all out. So this is the crew deck pack that came out with them, and it's really cool. I'm not doing this on purpose, sorry. No, it's a really good deck. I really like this, but just to give you an idea, the card stock is pretty much exactly the same as you'll find with the deck pack that was released. I did a quick critique on that. The deck apocalypse, I think I called it, and yeah, this has got everything you need obviously to play Mr. Freeze crew. You've got his own factions cards here for objective cards. You've got a couple for the two of the main characters, of course, Mr. Freeze himself and the sidekick Killer Frost, who we'll be getting to later on. You get your 4 Ice Age cards, which I'll explain a little bit in a moment, and of course the here we are, just a single-sided card just to show you the rules that this crew do. So if you notice, you can see if you pause it, you'll see that you can freeze suspects on the board. So the suspect markers for either side can become frozen, which is pretty awesomely useful. There's various ways of doing it, not just the way it says up here, that certain things around the game will, you know, in your crew will say that you can freeze suspects. And models without the cold acclimation trait, which is pretty much all of Mr. Freeze's crew, have to spend an additional action to reveal a suspect which has been frozen. So you can already tell that there might be some annoyances there if you just run out of actions on your models and you can't reveal things as easy. Certainly makes backpacks less useful. But that said, you know, backpacks mean you can actually reveal things when you might not have been able to before, but hey, never mind. You get the 4 Ice Age cards, which are pretty awesome. This is what they do. Here's one of them. You have these to your side of the game table at the start of the game. Basically, if you freeze a suspect within 4 inches of an enemy model, you can actually take one of these cards and take one of the cards in their objective hand out of the game for the time being. It's pretty damn good. When your opponent then unfreezes a suspect marker by revealing it, you actually then can, they then get their card back into this. They get their card back, and they get to start playing again. With that card goes back on top of the deck. What it does is it basically locks down opponents' objective cards, which is really useful. Obviously, you're taking cards out of their scoring potential, so you're either reducing their score ceiling altogether if it's one of those decks that needs to, that gets to score most of its cards, or you could potentially lock down something which is a really powerful, like a 3-pointer or something. If you take a snitch out of your opponent's hand, you can sort of mess around with their, what their plans were for the entire turn if you're lucky. It's it's just a nice little thing. This is the main gimmick that Mr. Freeze has. He locks down his opponent's cards. A lot of the cards in the deck actually play around with frozen suspects as well, so you can score by freezing suspects. I think you can reveal suspects which are frozen to score, things like that. So you get a lot of incentive to act in character as the deck would be. So there you go. It's a nice way to play your crew. and yeah, like I said, it messes with your opponent at the same time, and this is how the game works. Basically, all the crews really do interact really well with each other. It's going to be interesting to see how they do against how this deck acts against Joker, how it acts against Batman, Court of Owls, any of them. Okay, well, let's get on to the nice shiny stuff. Yeah, let's have a look at the models. And we might as well start with the big cheese himself. This is the Mr. Freeze that we're getting for 3rd edition, and I am not disappointed in this model, even one tiny little piece. As you can see, the customary amount of detail. There's the gun, there's his head. As you can tell, it's very easy build, funnily enough. I thought there'd be all wires and things to worry about, and just bits and pieces, but no, it's a torso, one leg, one leg to glue on, his arms and his head, they're all very easy on the backpack, but the backpack I found slotted in perfectly well, and just everything lined up. The stars were in alignment, and I was fine. Interestingly, 2 base options, as you can see, one poking in out of the other, a bit like Ra's al Ghul. I think it's the only one that springs to mind that does that in terms of that, but I'll just show you. Actually a much easier fit this time as well. He slides in and out very, very easily. The detail on this smaller base just slots lovely into this one. Doesn't look like it will rub too much, so painting shouldn't be an issue. As you see, I put a whole bunch of green stuff around the bottom, but didn't really have to do that. I just thought it'd be nice to have it uniformly icy all the way round. And there you go, pops in, really good fit. I always play with mine on the bigger bases because I think it looks better, and looks is what it's all about, but I know other people have different feelings than that. One last thing just to show you is that obviously for once I've finished painting him, the model comes with a little plastic dome, as you can see there, which I'll need to trim down to the size I want before slotting it in and gluing it very carefully indeed. Okay, well, let's get on with his rules. This is the faction leader, so the titular faction leader. So here we are. Here is Mr. Freeze. On his base options in the Cryer armor, he's the leader, of course, for only his faction, so no cross-faction specializations. Can't be used as a free agent, this one. 90 rep. That's kind of average for a leader, shall we say? And for a decent leader at least. Willpower 8 and endurance 7, no surprises there. His stats are on the same sort of par as the support leaders you'd get with organised crime, say. 3 and 3 for attack and defense, but don't let these fool you. Obviously, the 3+ strength is there because of his armor, but that's not going to worry anyone, is he, with those with that really paltry attack value? But let's see, shall we? This guy, his gun, there's going to be a lot to unpack in this, because it's a singular blood damage, which isn't going to set the world afire, and does 4 shots though, plus the strength die with 3 rounds of ammo, so almost every turn of the game he'll be able to fire. Medium range, pretty useful. Mechanical on the strength die, so again, pretty good. Cold, get used to this keyword coming up a lot. All the weapons and things generally do cold in this gang. What that means is on a successful hit, your opponent takes a -2 movement counter, which is pretty useful. I mean, it's not going to worry the Nightwings or the Harley Quinns of the world, but could annoy those average speed henchmen quite a lot. Cold is going to be something your opponent's going to have to get used to, so yeah. Exposure is a rule we'll come to, cryo weapon as well, and accurate, so +1 to hit. So yeah, plenty of shots at +1 to hit. Exposure's awesome, incidentally. It means every hit after the first does 2 blood damage instead of the 1. Now that's automatically putting this, so the first hit, you only got hit a little bit, maybe, is the way it works, is you take 1 blood, but as soon as you start taking 2, 3, 4, you're taking double blood. That's starting to worry us, since there's so many shots and since it's accurate. If he doesn't reduce his dice for moving and shooting or whatever, you're going to be worried about this gun. This gun is going to cause you some pain, potentially. Cryo weapon is further cool and awesome as well. Basically, it means that if you hit an enemy, a little bit of that splash damage will hit the model within 2 inches as well. And if there's a suspect marker within 2 inches of the targeted model, that suspect marker will become frozen. Remember I said there's multiple ways of making suspect markers frozen, so your opponent walks up, puts down a suspect marker, can't get it far enough away from them, and then you freeze them and it, just to give yourself that little bonus to your point scoring abilities. So there you go, that's pretty cool. And now on to a customary large list of traits for a leader, but it's quite simple. A lot of these ones we've seen before. Desensitized is the what I call the Bane rule. It's where you don't get knocked out if your willpower is reduced to nothing. You start then eating into your endurance, so you can't knock out Mr. Freeze. You could just have to. He's got that big old life bar, that basically means. So yeah. So Ice Flash is a special action which we've seen on Gentleman Ghost before. It basically targets someone within 10 inches and can potentially slow them down a lot. I think it might also reduce their actions, but again this ties into the specials for the crew, because it will freeze suspect markers as well when you do it. Reinforced gloves means he's doing double stun damage when he punches people instead of single. Last means he's reducing the amount of stun damage coming his way. Scheming 2 is awesome. It's that rule where you where you can move suspect markers at the beginning of the turn, doing 2 of them because it's Scheming 2 there, and yeah, that's really, really handy, even if you're not using it to your own ends with your own objective deck, which the Mr. Freeze cards certainly can benefit you for that. You can mess around with your opponents. If you can get half an idea what your opponent wants to do with their deck, you can really botch their plans up with scheming. Scientific is another good one. It adds 1 to his special value and means he gets 2 special actions for the price of 1. When he does a special action, he can follow up with a different special. So if he can do his Ice Flash, he can follow it up with Cryo Grenade, which we'll get to in a moment. Vulnerability to fire, well, he would, wouldn't he? But not such a problem. There's way less fire causing damage in the game than there is cold, especially now. So yeah. Vulnerability fire is just if your opponent does get that off on him, then fair play to him, because they've had to invest and set it up. Cryo Grenade is a special one which we've only seen in the Freeze crew before. That means within 8 inches, I think. Yes, within 8 inches he pops down an explosive template, and it's a freeze grenade basically. It basically means opponents get the cold rule, so slow 2, and suspect markers under that get frozen. So there you go, long range freezing suspects again. Cryo Armor 2. Cryo Armor is something you're going to see a lot in this crew again. Sorry to keep boring you with that phrase, but yep, you're going to see this one a lot. Basically 2 is the number of dice that attacks lose when they're coming in at you. So effectively, this Mr. Freeze, as well as being desensitized, has medium armor as well. And of course, if he's within very close range of a frozen suspect of either side, he gains 2 free efforts when he's defending as well in close combat, just in case that wasn't enough. So yeah, get those frozen suspects near your boss and he will be basically indestructible. And he's got Cold Acclamation, which is a keyword, which is what enables him to mess around and reveal frozen suspects without having any penalty. So yeah, that's Mr. Freeze. And yeah, so he's a tank basically. This is not a guy you really need bodyguard on, to be honest. In my opinion, you might be wasting their time if you do. He can wander around the board, freezing people, fulfilling his own objectives, and just being a bit of a beast. Anyone who comes into range of that cryo gun will regret it, probably. And yeah, it's he's got the scheming, he's got the and the ability to use Ice Flash and the Cryo Grenade to freeze suspects. He's playing in a way that allows you to score cards as well. He doesn't have to be all offensive all the time either. Okay, it's not like Deathstroke where you feel you're not getting your use out of him if you're not chopping things up. Right, okay, let's move on, see what's going on with the rest of this crew. Moving on to Killer Frost. This is a model which you get as part of the Cold as Ice, the Mr. Freeze crew basically. Mr. Freeze available on his own as an optional, I suppose, purchase. You can run this crew just with Killer Frost, and she is a sidekick, as we'll see in a moment. But this is her model, another chair model. But if this one could arguably be present on a board quite easily in a chair that she's constructing around herself, because I mean, we'll look at it. It's not like it's an ordinary chair. This is a construct of ice, and that's what she does. So she could construct this anywhere. Not a little bit of filling I popped in there just to hide the worst excesses of the gaps on her base, but probably wouldn't really show that much in a once it's been painted anyway, it being an ice sculpture and all. Yeah, nice pose, awesome models. It's very simple, easy to put together. There's no confusion. They've done a really good job. There was quite a lot of flash on the chair itself, which was kind of tricky to spot which bits were flash and which bits were supposed to be sticky out bits of ice, but I got there in the end. And I'm sure if I haven't missed any, if it's evaded me so far, then, well, there you go. It's I'm not going to spot it now, and I'm probably not going to spot it in future. Right, let's move on to her rules, and here she is. So again, sorry about the quality of the cards. I had to get these off of the web, and they're not available. These aren't official ones. These are ones off of the. No, sorry. These are ones which I downloaded from an emulator of an Android app. So there you go. These are not the ones off the Night Models website, which I'm hoping they will put up, and they've told me they will, but they haven't yet. So here she is, Killer Frost Rebirth, a sidekick, which means she can be the boss of the crew as well. Mr. Freeze only, so again, no free agent rank there. 90 rep, remember that's the same as Mr. Freeze, so she is interchangeable with Mr. Freeze. So if you do have the crew box and then you buy Mr. Freeze later on, you just want to use him as quickly as possible, you can swap her out and they're like for like swap. So no need to jiggery pokery around with your list or anything. They're just a straight swap out if you want to do that. Of course you could take them both in the same crew anyway, but they both cost you 90 rep a piece. So let's go into her stats. So standard kind of sidekick fare, I think. It's willpower 7, endurance 6, so not the toughest turkey in the yard, but attack 3, defense 4, 4 up strength. She's quite fast though. She is faster basic than Mr. Freeze himself, as she should be. Her ice daggers, no limit to the ammo because of course she creates this herself. Blood split, blood and stun damage, 2 shots, throwing, so she won't lose dice from moving and shooting. Cold, as we saw. Exposure, meaning that you get extra blood if you hit multiple times, so that's pretty cool. Medium range is really solid as well, means you can got a good range of influence there. Short range just seems to come up, well, short, shall we say, if you're trying to pick off annoying henchmen who are doing things. Medium just tends to mean you can reach out and get them that bit more. Let's go into her list even of traits. So acrobat, we know what that is. It puts her movement up to 11 and allows her to dodge. So you might have gathered she's not got that big suit of power armor that Mr. Freeze has. She doesn't have desensitized. She is gaining her survivability from her dodging ability from acrobat, really, and adaptable, which you can use to increase her defense to a very respectable 5 if you want, or her attack to 4, or we give her even more movement every turn. Just make your choice. Boss's orders, I had to look this one up because I'd forget it. It means that if she activates it as a special action for the remainder of the turn, your henchmen attacking enemies within 8 inches get +1 to hit, I think is what it is, +1 to their attack value, or +1 attack dice. It's a +1. It's a good buff. She does tie in better with your crew than Mr. Freeze does in terms of the actual models. She leads them better, shall we say. Chill Touch allows her to do blood damage with her close combat attacks instead of doing a single point of stun damage, she does a single point of blood instead, which could be potentially very useful, but don't rely on it on her own. She might be a bit wasted as a psychic. Ice Flash, same as Mr. Freeze, so slows enemies down. It's another use of that special action. She isn't scientific, so don't forget she's only got one special action a turn if you give her Audacity, and you will give her Audacity, won't you? But yeah, it can also turn suspects frozen, so useful. Runaway means she can't be arrested. Handy little rule there. Coordination is another special action which ties in with her using her crew. Means that she can target a henchman within 8 inches, I think, and it allows them to do an action, which is a handy. An out of sequence action, bloody useful. Cold acclimation, of course, and she has the Ice Queen rule, which I believe she can turn a suspect marker within 4 inches frozen, I think is what it is. And also, what is it? Frozen model. So I'm just reading it off. Frozen models for Mr. Freeze, free effort while they're in 4 inches. Oh yes, it also means your crew gets buffs around frozen suspects as well. So go for it. They get extra efforts as well. So yeah, this lady empowers your crew more rather than stomping around the board, freezing people herself. So there you go, different play styles within the same crew already. Bloody useful, I think. I think she's a really good, valuable addition to the crew, and it's good that she comes with the crew box, if you ask me, because otherwise people might not take her so much. I don't know, that's a silly thing to say probably, but no, I think she's solid and she's got more to offer than meets the eye as well. She'll definitely help you get the best out of your crew. Speaking of which, let's start looking at the crew, shall we? And in by what I gather was popular demand for amongst the fan base is a pair of polar bears for the crew. These are henchmen, believe it or not, and let's just take a look at these models. I'll do them one at a time. These are massive models. These are on 60mm bases, so these tower above most of the other models in the range overall. And yeah, as you can see, pretty cool. This is the combat polar bear, as it's called, probably the close combat polar bear, with its we see his armored gauntlets, these cryo claws or whatever they are. Damned awesome. A little bit of filling required, I don't know, which is easy because it's fur. So yeah, again, I filled around the outside of the base just so I could have ice all the way around, save me painting any cobblestones underneath it. And yeah, it's solid. Let's see if we can get, there's all the requisite detail in all the right places. It's a bear. Yep, it's a bear with a suit power armor of sorts ish on. Okay, and its friend, which is my favourite, the one I prefer more, less obvious armor on, but this bear has a gun manned by a smaller polar bear, which is loading it. It's really cool. And yeah, this is the ranged polar bear, shall we say, according to the card. So yeah, nothing wrong here. This is all very normal, okay, and exactly what you'd expect to see in a game. Yes, and I really like these guys. Like I said, they're both henchmen, so no reason not to be able to take them. Let's have a look at their rules. So these are mainly sort of double up, so I'll do one at a time, but yeah, we'll mostly be covering everything in the combat polar bear. So yeah, combat polar bear is got 63 rep, ranged polar bear is 66, so they're pretty much interchangeable if you want to swap between them with that many points. So again, yeah, pretty cool. Only work for Mr. Freeze as a henchman. Willpower 5, boo. Endurance 10, yay. So yeah, you think that would be alarm bells, but I'll show you in a second. It's got desensitized, just like Mr. Freeze, so that you're not knocking this. You don't knock a polar bear out by getting through its willpower. You have to do the endurance as well. So yeah, the low willpower is only really a problem if you end up having to take willpower rolls for hypnosis and things, but never mind, eh? Attack 4, defense 3, pretty expected. It's, very respectable attack value though for a henchman. Strength 2+ because it's a bear. Movement 8. Average, and special 3 as you'd expect. Cryo claws for the combat bear, dealing the blood and stun, which is the same as the claws would be anyway. So the keywords Lee. Cold, of course, so if you get hit by it, -2 movement for you next turn if you can still walk. And overwhelming, which makes it harder for the opponent to block the attacks. Yeah, so pretty useful, doing split damage as you can see, but don't cry about that. It's a lot. You're going to get a lot of attacks out of this guy, and he can do more, as we'll see in a second. So animal puts his movement up to 10 anyway. I thought it also meant they couldn't interact or manipulate suspects either, but no, doesn't. It does mean, however, he's stuck to the ground floor, can't climb or jump if you're an animal for some reason in this, but yeah, he's dangerous enough on the ground floor that in most boards have enough ground floor on them to me that this guy's still a threat anyway. Claws, yeah, we saw that, just gives him blood and stun. He's an armed attack. Desensitized, cover that already. He's huge, so 2 less stun damage per attack. Tough skin means strength dies are -1 to damage him, so even harder to get through to this guy. Unstoppable is a special action. You activate that and opponents need to pass 2 defense rolls to block your close combat attacks rather than just the one. So if you give this guy audacity and then activating for combat, he is, and you trigger unstoppable. That's bloody awesome. Charge is another special action. I only do one, so bear that in mind, but charge means that in his movement, which is 10 inches now, remember, he can move through enemy models and anything that he moves through Again, on a 2+, which is his strength, will take a couple of stun damage for the trouble. That could be very useful. That's awesome if you ask me. I really like that. It means the opponent gets punished for setting himself up in too close together, and if you use that before you go into combat with him, then yeah, they could be really smarting before you even roll dice. Drag is the man-bat rule, as I think of it. It allows them to pick up and carry a friendly model and now a suspect marker, so you can do some jiggery pokery with these bears for your deck scoring as well. Bloody good. Cryo Armor 1, remember Mr. Freeze? So as if these guys weren't tough enough to get rid of, they now reduce the amount of incoming damage by dice by 1, and cold acclamation. So there you go. The only thing really to cover now is what the range bear also has. So it's got exactly the same stats. So having the cryo claw, got the cryo heavy cannon, which is Mr. Freeze's gun basically, except devastating, so an extra strength die. Eek. And doing lots more damage to start with, but don't forget the exposure rule is there, so excess hits will kill nastily. The same rules for the most part. Doesn't have unstoppable because it doesn't have the close combat weapons. Does have charge still though, has tough skin, has the cryo armor 1, has barrage, which is a different special action, allows this guy to target without line of sight, and for the cost of -1 to hit and -1 attack die. So always worth bearing that in mind. Enemies cannot hide, and this gun does enough damage on its own, even with its minus to its effectiveness, to still cause lots of damage. So yeah, the two polar bears, Behave and Bear Quiet, should we call them, and they're solid and a good addition to this crew, and give this that's something very different from the usual hoodlums you get in these crews. Okay, right, let's move on to more humanoid matters. Okay, two of the standard thugs here. Here we go. We're going with thug number 1 and freeze thug number 3, just to go with these two. These are two which aren't in the reinforcements pack, of which are duplicates. So I'll just go into these ones first. I figured I'll explain in the next little segment what the other two do. So these are your two sort of unique guys, and we've got this is freeze thug number 1. It's a guy holding a what's it called? The cryo launcher cannon sort of thing. He's a cool, nice actiony pose. Tiny bit of filling I popped in on his shoulder there, but yeah, I think I put that in mainly because I had lots of green stuff left over rather than because it really needed it. So yeah, make of that what you will. Yeah, pretty cool. Looking forward to getting this guy painted. Should be a relatively simple job compared to some of the models in the range as well. So yeah, because it's Parker's and armor, so can do that. Yeah, like it. And his cohort here, Freeze Thug 3. It's a lady with a armored fist. What's that? The cryo fist, power glove, basically, in the traditional sense of the word. And yeah, another great figure. If I can just there we are. Nice. Yeah, decently sculpted head, decently sculpted hair, a Parker, some armour, making it a much easier paint job than some other models could have been. So yeah, let's see what their rules are like. Okay, Freeze Thug 1, here we are. Henchman, 33 points, 3,300 funding. Remember these values. All the henchmen in this crew are around about the same amount, which again makes for really easy crew building. So yeah, that's good. Willpower, endurance 5, 3, 3, 5 up, 8, and 3 for the stats. As you can see there, these are all pretty average stats for a low-level thug. Obviously a lot of the points are going into his gun, which is pretty good. The cryo launch does 2 blood and a stun, lots of shots. Medium range, mechanical, cold, cryo weapon exposure, so it's Mr. Freeze's gun again, so it's freezing suspect markers perhaps, it's doing splash damage, and excess hits with exposure will be doing even more blood damage, so excess hits will be doing 3 blood and a stun each as well. Oof. So yeah, stand around this guy at your peril. You get some, I'm just seeing you're getting some pretty decent crossfires here. His traits are good as well. So you got hacking, which is amazing. You've seen that on Infiltrate Op for the Soldiers of Fortune and Oracle, amongst others, for Bat Family, for the Batman crew. And yeah, this is getting that on a henchman. Whoa. The ability to move markers, let alone suspect markers, damn straight awesome. A radio, so even if you don't give him audacity, he can still go around being inspired if he's far away from the boss. Cryo armor on a henchman with armor is just an annoyance if you get into henchman versus henchman fights, and of course cold acclamation to make him part of the crew as well. So a very solid figure, probably be picked out. He's not particularly survivable even with the cryo armor, with his fairly paltry stats, but nonetheless you leave him unattended at your own peril. He will do damage to you, and if he doesn't, he can score. So yeah, moving on to the Freeze Thug 3. Interestingly has an endurance of 7, which is damn good. 32 points, so similar ballpark. No funding cost because she's not shooting anything. Same stats as before, so henchman stats, get used to these. Her cryo fist does blood and stun split damage. Cold crushing, meaning opponents need 2 successful blocks to nullify one of your attacks. And heavy, which is means her strength die is 4s now, so damn good. Her traits give her that good old cryo armor and cold acclamation, so yep, she can survive a bit longer to make sure she uses that fist. Drop it and cryo charge are her 2 interestingly unique traits. Now cryo charge I think boosts up her weapon. It means that if she activates it, I think it does something to the cryo fist, but it gives her a critical shock or something like that. So yeah, it adds an extra level of threat to your damage. Drop it is a bloody useful one. Hang on, if I just have a quick look at what it does again, because I've forgotten. Yes, you make an enemy within 8 inches makes an opposed willpower roll. Now if they fail, if that works out for you, they fail their opposed willpower, that model places a new friendly suspect in contact, ignoring the usual placement rules. So I think what it means is you can get enemies to place your suspect markers for you next to them. That's bloody good, because then if they've got a suspect marker next to them, you can then freeze it, and yeah, you're getting bonuses and things from various parts of your crew. So yeah, plus the ability just to place suspect markers just from special actions is awesome. So there you go. These two models add a lot to your crew potentially in terms of scoring or in terms of damage, and you'll find that as a theme throughout this crew. Yeah, so let's just go and look at the last 2 models and see what they do. And the remaining 2 models, these 2 are actually minions, so they're henchmen which can be taken multiple times if you have the models, and there's a separate blister pack. So rather than show you the blister pack with the duplicate models, I'll just show you these and explain you that they can be taken multiple times. So in this you've got 1 shooting henchman and 1 close combat henchman. As you can see, here's the shooting lady up close and personal. She has 2 light cryo cannons, and yeah, solid sculpts once again. Parkers and armor I likey, should make for easier paint jobs. One thing to notice is every single model in this crew has a sculpted base now, so no cobblestones are needed at all, even for the henchmen. So you can easily theme this crew very nicely just for the bases alone without any muss or fuss. And yeah, this lady is suitably awesome. There's full facial detail under that Parker. Here's the guy. Okay, yep. Heroic pose may be out of sync with his actual capabilities, but yeah, can't solidly criticize this sculpt at all. Okay, so let's get on to the stats quickly, hopefully before the battery runs out. They're both henchmen. 33 rep 300 or 32 rep for the other guy. So yeah, again, see they're all more or less the same, so if you're swapping models around you can easily do that. They got very basic henchman stats. Her cryo light cannons do blood and stun but have all the gamut of rules as you'd expect from the cryo weapons already. Scratch my nose. Right, I'm going to have to hold on for a second while I charge the battery a bit. I'll be right back with you. Okay, sorry about that. Panicking as the battery just suddenly disappeared in front of my eyes. Yeah, the attack value of 2 is not going to worry you if you've got a shooting gun. And yeah, so like I said, the cryolite cannons with all the expected rules to mean that you just can't ignore this sort of damage. There's minion, cryo armor, cold acclamation there. Force field's interesting for a special action if you give this lady audacity, which you might. In some cases, she counts as having cover for the remainder of the turn, which is well, potentially could make her even more survivable, considering she's got cryo armor as well. Some guns will just run out of dice trying to target her, but yeah, so that's pretty useful. You can put her out in the middle of nowhere, give her cover. There's a lot of use for audacity in this crew, so you got decent choices. So there you go. Freeze Thug 4, here you go, with his 32 rep. Remember, a bit more willpower, but and very very average stats. His cryo sword is cold, devastating and sharp, so he gets an extra strength die on 5s, but sharp, gets him re-roll it, so that's pretty decent. And there you go. Order is his trait of choice, which means that he can order another model to put down a suspect marker, so again, more suspects and everything. That's on henchmen as well. God. And cryo charge again, what that does, it actually gives his close combat weapon attacks critical freeze, and freeze is a bloody good status effect to inflict on your opponent. It stops them from activating, because it means they don't get any actions and things, so it could really lock down an important model. You got so much out of this guy. So overall, all of these henchmen, including the ones I've shown you before, all have a role to play, and really they slot. You can if you've got them all, and you don't have room for all of them in your points, you can interchange them between games without having to rewrite your entire list every single time. Yeah, I think this crew's been done really well. It's been designed really, really well. The points values all sort of slot into each other really well, and you can just carry on, playing game and go after game after game without having to go back to the drawing board every single time. Unless, of course, you want to start adding in the weird and wonderful random henchmen or free agents from other places. But if you just want to stick to the freeze theme, you can get really good variety just with the models in the set. Let's just bring Mr. Freeze back in, just to give you one last look at the man himself. Yeah, this guy's just solid and a worthy addition, and I can't wait to get him painted and get him on the gaming table. Overall, this crew, looking at the objectives, just my initial impressions are that this is a pretty easy. This is a crew where you can really learn the rules well. It's a great starter crew, if you ask me. It messes with your opponent. You can use audacity just about anywhere in the crew to do different things. So you've got that element of choice, which makes it for a very entertaining crew to play as. You can keep your opponent guessing because he doesn't know which models in your crew are going to have audacity, and anyone that does can make really good use out of it. The objectives and the amount of damage this crew can deal is huge, potentially with the polar bears and all the ice guns and stuff, but equally it knows it's another crew that if you go focus on full out attack, you're going to suffer because you're not scoring your cards. You have this balance between the scoring objectives and the dealing damage, and that's one of the key things that this game's all about, the Batman Miniatures game as a whole, I mean. Anyway, that's my thinking, and I look forward, like I said, to seeing more of this crew in action, etc. So I need to get it painted now. I hope you enjoyed this quick critique. If I missed anything out, if you can think of anything that I could have talked about but didn't, then please let me know, and any ideas, let me know as well. Okay, awesome. Thank you very much, and see you next time. Take care.